right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night to everyone who is joining us. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon from wherever you're joining us from. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation. We don't take it for granted, and thank you for showing up on time. Yeah, my name is Agatha, and in the meantime, before I start sharing my slides, I would really appreciate it if you could tell us in the chat box, what is your name? Drop your country's flag, because it's very important to see where all of us are joining us from. Drop your country's flag, and maybe you can tell us if you have an idea, how much money do you think we should put towards our extended family support? Don't worry, make the answers as practical as you can or as crazy as you can. You can even share how much you've been putting towards your extended family support. The most important bit is to tell us your name and drop your country's flag. It's important to see for us to see the diversity of the Baobab community and of everyone who's joining us here. Thank you again. So we're ready to begin, and I'm requesting Angela to share the slides. Thank you everyone for being active in the chat box. All right, thank you everyone for joining us in this webinar called When Helping Hearts, How to Deal with Black Tax. So this is a very hot or heated conversation, but we are joined by our guest TK, who is going to take us through this conversation, and I'll be your moderator. So let's join the next slide, Angela. Okay. Thank you again to all of you for joining us. Thank you for showing up on time. My name is Agatha. I am a writer, a creative artist, financial coach, and the founder of the Wealth Tribe. And the Wealth Tribe is a community of young people who openly talk about money and help each other build wealth. I would really appreciate it in the comment section. If you're part of the Wealth Tribe, please say that I am part of the Wealth Tribe, because I'd be very excited to see how many people received this invitation from me. And I am very passionate about helping people who are struggling with debt, about helping people who are unable to make budgets that work, people who want to grow their savings, people who want to improve the quality of their lives, and those who are looking to diversify their investment portfolios to attain financial freedom by offering personalized financial coaching and financial literacy content. Through my blog, my ebooks, and coaching, one-on-one coaching, I have helped over 18,000 people come up with a financial plan and build generational wealth, which sets people to leave a legacy of wealth to their families. I'm also an alumni in residence. I'm also a current Baobab alumni in residence fellow, and I'm going to tell you what this Baobab is. I'm going to tell you all about what Baobab is in a few minutes. And now let's meet our guest, TK. Please, to our participants, please remain muted. So let's meet our guest, TK. Tokiso Nthebe, aka the Finance Bachelor, is a personal finance coach, travel enthusiast, and founder of TKO Consultancy based in Maseru, Lesotho. He's an avid content creator where he creates personal finance, travel, and lifestyle content on his blog, podcast, and YouTube channels. He advocates for financial wellness, and he's very passionate about retirement planning, which is a very important topic when we're talking about black tax. He has over 10 years, over a decade working experience in banking, asset management, and telecommunications before venturing into business. TK, please say hi to everyone.
Thank you so much. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are in the world. My name is Tokiso, like I've been introduced, and I'm looking forward to having a great conversation around a very sensitive but important topic, black tax. So I will not say much. I'm excited to have you here, and I'm looking forward to engaging with everybody and learning from everybody tonight, because black tax, whatever you want to call it, affects many of us. So let's do this. Thank you.
All right. A reminder to our participants to kindly mute please kindly mute yourself, because it makes the conversation easier for all of us. Angela, that slide. Okay, so what is Baobab? I shared earlier that I am a current alumni in residence fellow with Baobab. Baobab is the social professional learning community for young African leaders, participants, and alumni of the MasterCard Foundation programs. But the beautiful is that nowadays Baobab is open to everyone, not just those people who've gone through MasterCard Foundation programs. So if you're here and you're joining us, you have an opportunity to join Baobab today. But before you join, it's important for me to tell you why should you join Baobab. Number one, opportunities. The Baobab platform has an opportunities board with curated career selections from all over the world. And these career selections cut across all career sectors. It may be finance, may it be tech, may it be IT, may it be HR, maybe it be freelancing, anything. You can find all opportunities curated for you. There's also an opportunity for professional development where you're able to sharpen your skills with a growing catalog of courses and professional development events. And all these things are free. For example, there are so many free courses on the platform. Then there's the mentorship bit where Baobab offers mentorship opportunities and hosts industry experts such as TK who answer trending questions for young African leaders. You can also get an opportunity to get somebody who's going to mentor you one-on-one. And then there's the networking aspect. You'll be joining a growing community of like-minded young African leaders whose interests, passions, and experiences just like your own. So as you can see, and just as I shared earlier, I am currently an alumni in residence fellow with Baobab, and I got this opportunity by joining Baobab. So it's through Baobab's opportunities board where I saw this fellowship and I applied. And the beautiful thing is that this fellowship allows me to write personal finance content, my experiences with growing my wealth and my personal finance content. I share it on the platform, and through this I've also paid actually to do this. So the alumni residence fellowship is something where you're paid a stipend for you to be able to create creative content. So if you're a creative, if you're a blogger, if you're a YouTuber, if you're a TikToker, any of those things, please join Baobab so you get an opportunity for you to jump on this opportunity. So Angela will share a link in the comment section where you can click and immediately join the Baobab platform. So yeah, jump on this opportunity as soon as today. Next slide. So what is Black Tax? Black Tax is the financial support that Black professionals are expected to give their extended families. So you as a Black professional, maybe you have a 9-to-5 job, maybe you're a freelancer, whatever job that you show up to every day to make money. Out of that money, apart from paying your bills, your rent, your electricity, and supporting yourself fully as a person and your children, maybe if you have kids or your spouse, you're also expected to give part of this amount towards your extended family support, maybe your mom, your dad, your grandparents, your cousins, your younger siblings. So this is what we are talking about when we talk about Black Tax. And I first came across this concept from reading Trevor Noah's book, where he says that his mother describes this as a way where instead of building yourself financially, you're unfortunately stuck trying to bring everyone on board. So as opposed to using your salary to build yourself up and pay your bills comfortably and also start saving for retirement, unfortunately, you're stuck in a situation where you're really, really trying to bring everyone on board. And this definitely means that it jeopardizes how fast you can achieve financial freedom or how much money you can save towards your retirement. And now, now that you understand what we are talking about in general, I can share my experience with Black Tax. So I am the last born in a family of 2 siblings, and fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, depending on how you view it, I am the person who got the most education between my 3 siblings. And this therefore has kept me in a position where I have been, since I started working, I have been making the most money. But I have actually never been in a work situation or a job that pays me a lot of money. The only thing that has helped me do well financially, if I can call it, is because I am very good at budgeting, I'm very good at saving, and I'm very good at investing. And therefore, so what happens is that in our family, even my extended family, there's this assumption that I'm a very rich person. Yeah, there's this assumption that I am a very rich person and that I make a lot of money. And so therefore, due to this assumption, I have this expectation that I'm supposed to spend, for example, $300 every month, supporting people in my family or sending this money to people in my family. Unfortunately, just like I said, I have never had a job that would allow me to make so much money that I have an extra $300 to share with my family. But people of my family members didn't seem to understand this concept. And so for me, my experience with black tax had been a painful one, because people don't understand, people don't have all these expectations. And at some point, I do remember that my definition of financial success was being able to support myself and being able to rescue everyone in my family, being able to have so much money that I'm able to pay rent, food, everything for my siblings and even my extended family. That was the definition of success, my definition of financial success. What this did, unfortunately, is it really affected my mental health, because I wasn't able to, because as you can see, this was a very, very big, this was a tall order. Because I wasn't able to do this, this meant that I viewed myself as a failure, because why is it that I'm not making millions, and why am I not rescuing everyone? So I constantly viewed myself as a failure, and this really affected my mental health, to a point where I had to go to therapy to talk about what can I really do. And that is when my therapist helped me be able to set boundaries, be able to redefine success for myself, and be able to be okay with just supporting people to the best of my ability, making peace with the fact that this is the amount of money that I can afford to support people. And with that, this has really improved the relationship I have in my family, but most importantly, the relationship I have with myself. And so with this, that has been my experience with black tax. And so now I am going to allow our guest, TK, to come back and tell us, TK, what has been your experience with black tax?
Hi, so firstly, I don't like the word black tax, but we'll unpack why I don't like the word black tax a bit later on. So when you were reading my bio, you mentioned that I'd love to travel, for as long as I could remember at university and high school, I used to have dreams of traveling and seeing the world. So when I started working, and like you, I'm also the one family member with the most number of degrees and education. So I've also been privileged enough to work in amazing companies from banking, asset management, and the likes. So because I love to travel and I plan my travels, people think that I have a lot of money, So I'm jet setting from Thailand to Lesotho to New York to South Africa, hopefully Kenya soon, and Uganda, and all those amazing places. And family suddenly looks at me like I have a lot of money. So my black tax experience was when my grandmother passed away in 2009, and I was still at university at the time, but my grandmother's sisters suddenly felt like I was wasting money, So as Black people, for those who can relate, when a loved one passes away, we have this whole ceremony after the funeral or during the funeral where we put them to, we have the funeral, and then we have the tombstone ceremony. I think a lot of people on the call can relate to the tombstone. So for me, when that had to happen for my grandma, suddenly I was that person who was supposed to fund this particular ceremony. And I was like, but no, this is my money. So it went as far as I was being attacked for wasting my money and being irresponsible and not supporting the family in time of need. The second one that I want to speak about, I wouldn't even call it black tax per se. I want to call it sibling tax. A lot of people don't talk about sibling tax, but there's also this expectation from your siblings that you are making all this money and therefore they are entitled to your money. And I remember I had a whole altercation with a younger sibling who had borrowed money from me. And then when he had to pay it back, we had a whole conversation about it. Suddenly there's excuses after excuses. So I think sibling tax also becomes part and parcel of black tax because we think we are entitled to people's money. So that, in a nutshell, would be my experience from a Black tax perspective.
Okay, and so that's a good story. What about, because your profile, and I know that you're a personal finance coach, what has been your experience with personal finance from the people that you coach? What stories that you had? Maybe you can share as generally, or what stories that you had?
Oh, girl. When you talk about Black tax and the clients, so I have a lot of clients that I coach from a personal finance perspective, but the biggest challenge that they have is a lot of my clients are going through Black tax situation where they feel responsible to provide for their siblings. So I had one client who was literally bleeding herself financially to a point that it was disheartening to watch, okay? What this person was doing is 80% of her income was going towards supporting the family and extended family. This meant that she was not providing for herself financially. She was not taking care of her basic needs. She was not saving, investing, or planning for her retirement. And the danger of this particular situation, she was so in a financial mess that getting her out of that state was disheartening, even for me as a coach, but I had to do the work. Secondly, she had beaten herself up so badly because she felt worthless. She felt guilty. She felt like she was toxic. I know we use the word toxic quite loosely in this day and age, but she felt toxic. And also, because she was not taking care of herself genuinely, the things that she enjoyed doing, she was really sad. It was sad to see her every single day. And for me, this really means that Black tax is dangerous. And if we don't talk about it, it can really break a lot of people. And the worst part about it as well is she was not in a position to talk about it, which was really also she was in a position not to accept what was happening to her. She was not equipped to set those financial boundaries that we speak about. So it was sad to watch. And that is one client I will speak about for this particular call, but I have many other clients, particularly young professionals, doctors, accountants, economists, freelancers, who have this obligation to take care of their loved ones.
Okay, that's a very relatable story to me, because I also, as a personal finance coach, there's a time I had this client who would put around $600 every month towards $600 towards supporting her parents and her husband's parents. And the thing is, she only made around $1,000. So if she's putting $600 towards family support, then what would happen is that she didn't even have school fees for her own kids. And so for me, at first, it was a shock, where she gets her salary and the first thing she does is support her extended family, and her own kids don't have school fees or even enough food. And at first I was shocked, and I started asking myself, how can this be possible? How can you receive your money and the first thing you do is support other people that are away from yourself and are away from your nuclear family? And so I came to the conclusion from having this conversation that one of the causes is because people don't talk about money. Like, she has never ever had a conversation about her money with her mom and every other person in her family who she was supporting. And so people had this major assumption that she made millions. People had this major assumption that she made millions, but the truth is she did not make millions. And you see, assumptions, people are not talking about money, and then the expectations are super fat. So that's the conclusion. And so, of course, even I had to work around making her I also had to work around making her have that conversation with her parents, which drastically reduced the amount of money she had to put towards extended family support. And at this point, I would like to encourage our participants to put any questions they have about Black tax, and feel free to share their experience about Black tax. We will have a Q&A session where we will be able to answer all your questions. But for now, we have to continue that conversation, where I'm going to ask my guest, what do you think causes Black tax, and why is it called Black tax? Oh, the beautiful thing is back with slides. Yes.
Yeah. So firstly, I think the word Black tax emanates from, I think predominantly from South Africa, and I stand to correct it, but I think it comes from South Africa. And this really comes from, South Africa went through apartheid, where it was a racial discrimination between the white people and predominantly the other races. But because South African Blacks particularly were economically excluded, they were literally at the back foot of the economic participation. So with time post-apartheid, what really happened was a lot of young professionals started going to university. So for many people, it was the first, TK was the first to go to university. Whoever was the first to go to university, you know, we went to go to university to go be doctors, accountants, economists, engineers, and those cool professions, if you will, marketers, if you will. So the assumption really came from the fact that if you went to university to go study to be a doctor, a lawyer, you must be earning a lot of money. And because of our economic background, the expectation firstly, was that because you're making all this money, you have to go back and support those that come after you. And usually because you were the first one, that means that there's a whole generation that comes behind you, younger siblings, younger cousins, younger relatives. And again, we are big families as Black people, you know. And again, from a South African context, there's this concept called Ubuntu. Ubuntu simply translates into I am because you are. So basically, as Black people, we grew up in a community. So because you come from this community that has contributed to helping you raise you, it then means that there is also that expectation that you will take care of your siblings, your family, and in many cases, your community. And personally, back to what I mentioned as well, when I do go back, I studied in South Africa, by the way. So when I do go back to where I live or where I was born, I literally get there and the community also has this expectation that we have raised you, therefore you need to take care of us. So that's pretty much where Black tax comes from. And just to wrap it up, it's Black tax because it affects Black people. And the word tax comes from the fact that it feels like something is being taken away from you. If you are paying taxes, you will know just how painful paying tax is, though we have to do it by law, but that's where the word Black tax comes from, in my view.
The next question was, what are some disadvantages of paying Black tax?
Okay, thank you so much, Angela. So in my view, and my experience as a personal finance coach, some of the disadvantages of people paying taxes, listen to that, Black tax, some of the disadvantages of Black tax, the first one is it has a negative impact on your financial goals as a human being or as an individual. What I basically mean by this is we all have our financial goals, whether you want to go to school to develop yourself with a postgraduate degree, whether you want to buy a house, whether you want to buy a car, or whether you literally just want to save for rainy days. Black tax, because of that obligation or that responsibility, it takes away or affects your financial goals and generally your financial well-being. The second disadvantage of Black tax, in my view, is the impact it has on your mental well-being. So I am not a psychologist, firstly, disclaimer. So what I mean by the impact it has on your mental health is, from what I've seen with the clients that I've worked on, one, it affects your self-confidence because people feel guilty that they're not contributing enough. People feel guilty that they should be saving for their futures, but they have to take care of the feeling of the savings. And people feel guilty that they are not able to speak up to their families because of the expectation that you are earning a lot of money. And then lastly, people feel guilty because the assumption is that if you were a doctor, if you were an engineer, you have to earn a big amount of money, which in many cases is not the case. So it affects people's mental well-being because they are bottling all these feelings, all these emotions, all this guilt, and that eats away at them. The third impact is on your savings and your investments. If you are taking, say, for example, $150 back home every single month, it then literally means that you are not saving for your own future. It means that you don't have investments in place. And the fourth one that I want to speak about is the other disadvantage of Black tax is debt. So a lot of people who are experiencing debt, Black tax rather, end up going into debt to finance or to continue financing their families and their loved ones. In some cases, I've seen clients that are forced by the family members or the community members to take out loans and debt just so to keep up with the Nthebes, the Kumalos, or whoever the case may be. So it has a big impact on people's debt situations where people can go into deep levels of debt just trying to provide for the families. The other one is the guilt that I spoke about, and then the anxiety that comes with that. Every single day on the 20th, if you receive your salary on the 20th, or if you receive your salary on the 30th or the last day of the month, every single month end when you receive your salary, the impact black tax has is when your phone beeps or your phone rings. The financial anxiety that people experience is really quite damaging. And I think a lot of young people or young professionals do not talk about the financial anxiety. And again, there's also feelings of resentment because every single time people call you and ask you for money, and you have to sacrifice all of the hard work you put in, all of your income in some cases, it really just breaks you. So in some cases, black tax can feel abusive. Black tax can limit you from achieving your financial goals. And I read a study in South Africa. It's a South African study where research shows that people spend between 13 to 20 hours a month worrying about their personal finances. So this means that if employees, as an employer, if your employees are spending 20 hours a month worried about their personal finances, where black tax could be a big contributor, it then means that the company is also not being productive in terms of what it's supposed to achieve. Because if TK is spending 20 hours a month worried about his personal finances, it then means that I'm not doing the job that I'm hired to do. Therefore, the company is not making enough money or dealing with the customers that I need to be dealing with if I work with customers. So it then means that it also not affects the individual, the family, but it also affects the businesses and the economy at large. So these are some of the disadvantages of black tax. Angela, I don't know if Agatha is, I don't know if she's back yet. But if not, please let me know what the next question is so we can continue the conversation.
Okay, I was on mute. Agatha is not back yet, but I see some interesting comments in the chat section. So I just want to read that out for people who are not able to access chat, so you know what is going on there. So we have a comment from Sina who says, I can relate with this so much. Me being a firstborn, and let's be honest, it's painful. I agree with you 100%. I'm still in university and I have to worry about sending money home every time. This means neglecting my financial goals, which you just talked about, to save for post-grad because I have to send money. I have to gather from internships to solve issues back home. This is a big problem. I don't know how and why it started, but most of us here can definitely relate to this. So Hosborn says, in most circumstances, black tax is a vicious cycle, riddled with a lot of guilt, which you just talked about, and expectation to return a favor done to you. Can you imagine? Because I sent you to school, you have to pay me back. That's ridiculous. For example, part of my school was facilitated by my elder siblings. Therefore, once I got a job, it was automatic that I would step in to support my parents, siblings, their children, etc. The list goes on. I wouldn't live with myself to withhold support, no matter the sacrifice of personal wellness, knowing that someone else also sacrificed to get me to where I am. But I've learned that having a balance is important. Take care of yourself as well, even if it means being selfish for a little while, so that you can sustainably support those who depend on that support. I love the last comment because at the beginning, I thought, irrespective of his wellness and everything, financial status at the time, he's willing to do everything he's supposed to do. But at the end, it's about well-being. And personally, I graduated in 2019. I'm the last born. So majority of my siblings are older than me. And the support that I can really offer is to my nephews, my nieces, and probably my parents. So at the beginning, for me, it was a boundary matter. I'm in school, I'm not earning. I don't expect anyone to come and ask for money. Let's be clear on that. But once I graduated, nobody had to say a word. It's automatic. I felt the need to support in even the smallest way. I felt the need to support my family, my nephews, not because they supported me, but it's just that in a
African thing.
feeling of I want to support, I'm going to do this,
Absolutely.
I'm going to do this, but at what expense? So the next question was, what are the tips you would give to all of us here who are either going through this or are probably processing on how to go about it when it shows up?
Yeah. So I love that. And I love the comments because they really show that whether you are in Lesotho, Uganda, Kenya, South Africa, Namibia, or wherever in Africa you are, this is a common problem that we all go through. So firstly, for me, what I would love to do before I provide tips and ideas, the first thing that I would start off with is let's acknowledge the fact that as Africans, like I mentioned, in South Africa, there is this concept called Ubuntu. I am because you are, okay? So as Africans, by our very nature, we grow up in a community, we grow up in big families. So that expectation will always be there. But, and this is a big but, it's important for us to acknowledge that we have a responsibility to support, but within that support, we need to put boundaries. And I'll speak about boundaries in a little bit. The first thing that I want to start off with is I don't like the word black tax because black tax already has such negative connotations and associations. And anything that is already negative can become disheartening, can become depressing, can become a burden, if you will. So a dear friend of mine who's a psychologist, a counseling psychologist in Tamai, decided to, let's give it a new name. So we decided to reframe black tax to something more positive, such as gratitude. Gratitude. So personally, I've adopted the word gratitude instead of black tax. It does not take the fact away that I still have to support my family and siblings and their cousins and their kids, but it feels a lot lighter when I say I'm showing gratitude or I'm being grateful for helping me out, okay? But it does not mean that I have to give you my entire salary. The second thing that I feel is very important as young professionals, we need to have the difficult and honest conversations. And make no mistake, having conversations around black tax or gratitude, like I've reframed it, is not going to be easy. So imagine where families in Africa, across the African continent, already do not speak about money. Money remains a big taboo. And here comes TK saying, let's have difficult conversations about black tax or gratitude or whatever you prefer to call it. So, but it becomes very important for us to have those conversations. And what goes into this conversation? This is where you break that perception that you are earning a lot of money. I'm not saying disclose how much you earn to your family, but show them your monthly commitments. And the third thing that means that I want to advise you on is let's communicate what you can realistically afford. Earlier on, we asked how much is a comfortable amount. Some people suggested 10%, some people suggested $150. Depending on your individual situation, look at your individual budget, your financial situation, and then decide what is a comfortable amount that you can afford to support with without compromising your own financial goals. I love the analogy that for people who love flying, I love the analogy that the air hostesses or I love the analogy that they share on an airplane while flying, you know. So they always say in the event of an emergency, an oxygen mask will fall down, take it and put it on yourself first before you can help the other person. So the same thing, before you can help somebody out financially, you need to make sure that you put the oxygen mask on yourself, because you cannot help somebody else if you yourself are in a financial mess. So the first thing that we need to normalize is normalize prioritizing your financial needs first and normalize paying yourself first. So the other thing that's also very important is we always advocate for you to learn how to budget and prepare a spending plan, to live within your means and live within your means. So the other thing that's also very important is just because you are budgeting, you also need to teach your family and the people that you're supporting to live within their individual means. So if I'm going to support you with $150 every single month, I have to help you learn how to budget and live and operate within that $150 that I'm providing. So it becomes very important for us to also educate our families on how to budget so that they are also able to live within their means, so that the expectation coupled the reliance on Black tax slowly but surely starts to break down. The other thing that I feel is very important is, so if I'm TK, I'm a freelancer, I'm working hard, I'm doing this job, I have a side hustle, I have all of these things that I'm doing. Why can't my family and friends do the same? One of the comments earlier on spoke about she's a student, she has to do, she's studying, but she's also doing something on the side to make additional sources of income so that she can afford to send money home. How about we share the same strategies with our families back at home to say that, okay, over and above the $150 that I give you every single month, how about you start a side hustle so that you can also learn how to generate additional sources of income? If you're supporting your brothers, your sisters, depending on how old they are, what can they do to make additional sources of income for themselves? Why do you have to carry all the burden by yourself? So I think it's also time that we hold our families and siblings to account to say that what skills, what knowledge, what resources do you have that you can also do to make additional sources of income? I can bet you now, Angela, that when you ask them that question, there's a lot of things that they can do, but because people also become comfortable with not doing anything and expecting you to take care of them, that also becomes an issue. So those are some of the 5 things that I can quickly think of. Just to do a quick recap, let's reframe the term from Black tax to gratitude, have difficult conversations with our families, communicate what you can afford after looking at your budget, teach the family on how to budget and help them how to budget, and then have boundaries. I think the one thing that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to Black tax is the inability to set those boundaries. And if you don't have boundaries, this eventually will affect your mental health. And once your mental health is affected, then the problem becomes bigger than just it being a financial situation. So let's also learn to set those boundaries. Some days you need to toughen up and be able to say, I can only afford to give you $150, and anything beyond that is going to be a straight out no. So let's have those boundaries and let's have those honest, difficult conversations. And learn to prioritize yourself first, like I mentioned earlier on. So that's what I will share, Angela.
Thank you so much. Agatha is back. So Agatha, just before you jumped in, Toki was responding to the question of tips and tricks to go about Black tax. So you can jump in from here.
Okay, thank you, Angela, for holding it down for me. Technology errors happen, but I'm now back and I can take over the conversation. So TK, so just to check, you've already had the conversation about the link between mental health and Black tax, yes?
I think we can just I touched a bit on it, but I think we can touch into that going into the last question, which is the other ways that we can do that. So the reason we speak about the link between mental health and Black tax. So what I usually do, I work with a lot of psychologists because I've also realized that money issues necessarily go back to psychological issues. I'm not a qualified psychologist, so I can't speak on psychology, but how we were brought up, how we were raised around money, the money beliefs that we have play a part in how we manage our finances. So from a Black tax perspective, if you are constantly feeling anxious about your finances, if you constantly feel worried about your finances, it has an impact on your mental well-being. You know, if you constantly feel guilty that you can't help and you can't say no to family members financial requests, if you constantly feel like you are about to collapse or break, or you feel sad every single time somebody calls you and asks you about money or wants you to give them money, it does have a bearing on your mental health. And once that becomes a problem, then you need to go seek the help of a psychologist, a qualified psychologist at that. So that's where the link between mental health is. For me, finances play a big part because the psychology of money comes into play. But if you don't deal with the psychological aspects from a mental health perspective, it will definitely affect your finances. And if you don't deal with the financial issues, it definitely affects your mental health issues on the other side. So there's that synergy, or there's that link between the two. I don't know if I've left out anything that you'd maybe want to add on to.
No, I like that because for sure from experience and from the people that I work with, the problem with being anxious on making a decision is that you're more likely to make a bad decision, you know? So it's better to make financial decision when you're cool, calm, and collected. And the only way you can achieve that is when you go through, even you seek help from a therapist or from a mental health professional who not only helps you make peace with where you are, make peace with how much money you can afford, with how much money you can genuinely afford to help people, that that encourages you to be calm, and that makes it easier for you to make the right financial decisions. And so like
Absolutely.
on a personal level, going through therapy also not only did it make me more calm, which helped me make better financial decisions, but it also helped me set financial boundaries, because I am sure you talked about this, but actually being able to tell people no, we think that it is something easy. No, actually you don't think it's something
No,
hard.
it's not.
Yeah, it's very, very hard to tell your mom. It's very hard to tell your grandmother. It's really hard to tell your sibling that, no, I'm not going to send you this money, or I can only afford to send you this much, or I can only afford to support you for 2 years, for 1 year, and that's it. It's very difficult. But when you
Absolutely.
go through therapy and when you talk to a professional, then you're able to comfortably set boundaries without that anxiety and being so nervous to have that conversation about money. So this is
Absolutely.
why we encourage people. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
why TK
And I think
encourages. Mm-hmm.
And I think looking at Matthew's comment, he says, I think it's a he says, I like the airplane analogy. However, how do you address these conversations with older family members? And to what you were saying earlier on, it's a very difficult conversation to have,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Personally, I attempted to have these conversations many years ago. And because I had not worked on myself mentally, I literally just said it out, and it did not end well. It literally ended in tears. Okay. So retrospectively, I then decided to go to therapy to just work through my own internal issues, my own internal insecurities, so that I could build that confidence to have the difficult conversations. So this is where therapy comes in. For me, therapy helped me build my confidence to say, these are the boundaries that I'm going to do. From a financial coaching perspective, again, you don't go out and say, I can't help you because I can afford to. You literally start with open-ended questions. What does money mean to you? What are your expectations of me from a financial perspective? Okay, in the event that I'm unable to help, how does that help you? How does that make you feel? So for me, it's an ongoing process. It's work that you do over time. You don't just wake up and you decide, I'm going to have those boundaries. I personally am still working through that journey to set boundaries with myself as well, and my family, and the people I have relationships with as well. So it's a journey that takes time, but you need to get the help to work through it, because sometimes we really can't do it on our own. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, TK, for that. Maybe we can talk about just one last thing, and then we open the conversation to questions. So
sure.
My question, if you genuinely, honestly, if you genuinely cannot afford to support your family financially, because for sure that's true. For example, there are so many people in the Baobab community, for example, who are in uni at the moment, and the only money you get from your scholarship, for example, is a stipend. And maybe you live in London or a big city where that the stipend you're getting is not even catering for your needs. And so you genuinely cannot afford to support your family financially. So if you genuinely cannot, in what other ways? I think maybe you had already touched on this, but just a little, in what other ways, are there other ways you can support your family?
So for me, firstly, part of the other reason that contributes towards Black tax is people's lack of financial literacy. So the fact that we already don't talk about we don't talk about money as Africans is
Mhm.
already a problem. So
Yeah.
if you're already on this call and you really can't, if you're on this call or this webinar this evening or afternoon, or depending on where you are, it already means that you are interested in developing yourself financially and building the financial knowledge. So the first
Yeah.
step is actually have that money conversation with your family. Have a money
Mhm.
date. Okay,
Mhm.
guys, where are we in terms of our finances? What are the priorities what are the expenses that we need to prioritize? How can we open up additional sources of income? So let's start having financial conversations with our families. Secondly, buy them a book, invite them to a webinar, invite them to your mailing list.
Yeah.
Help them subscribe to a YouTube channel where money conversations are had. So give them resources, okay? Earlier on, I spoke about we are young professionals, we are engineers, we are accountants, we are lawyers. How can we use our skill set as young professionals to help empower our families? Business coaching. I'm not saying go be a business coach, but what ideas can you bring from the skill set, from the people that you've met at university, that you can literally take back home to say that, have you ever thought about, let's use the knowledge and the qualifications that we have to actually help and contribute to our families? And again, go to therapy. It's not everybody that can afford therapy, but go to therapy, you see a counselor, speak to somebody who can help you build that conversation and courage to have the conversation. If you can't, again, I'll go back, you cannot give from an empty cup. If you're a student and you're spending your entire stipend at home, it means that you have nothing to eat. It means that you are not productive to tackle your studies. It means that you won't graduate, so you can't give from an empty cup. So fill up your cup first, and whatever overflows, the rest of the people will enjoy.
Yeah, and maybe two more quick things that you can do to help your family. If you're good at interviewing, if you don't have money, for example, one thing I do, for some reason, I happen to be good at preparing for interviews. That is a thing that I help my family members with. If you're like in the process of applying for a job, I will coach you through how you're going to interview for that process. I'm also one of a person who has so many resources around which free online courses you can take. For example, on Baobab, like I keep saying, one of the best courses I ever took on Baobab was freelancing in the digital economy. And these are free courses that really taught me how to scale my business. So anytime I see somebody in my family who's asking me for money and I genuinely cannot afford at that time, it's beyond my budget, I tell them, please do this course. I even have one of my younger brothers that I'm really proud of, who recently took this course called virtual assistant, how to be a virtual assistant. And being a virtual assistant at this point in time,
paid somebody for that, actually.
Yeah, you'd pay somebody for a virtual, pay somebody for a virtual assistant. So somebody in my family, I actually set them at this course, and they did it, and they graduated, and now they are employed. So send them courses, tell children, review their CVs, review their cover letters. Those are things that you can do for free. So it doesn't always have to be money, because remember, and by the way, they also have to appreciate this kind of help, because remember, your time is valuable. Just like money, your time is super valuable.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So just to add on quickly, so what I normally do is I do send links to job vacancies, courses like you mentioned, and actually do send an invoice. They don't have to pay the invoice, but that's me sending them an invoice to say that this is how much my time is worth, just so that they're also appreciated mentally. It's part of the money conversations to say that if I'm going to help you get your own finances correct, this is how much it's costing me, because this is my time and this is my resources. So that way they will start appreciating and setting those boundaries to say that I can't always ask TK for A, B, C, and D, because this is the value that he's contributing to my life as well. So
perfect. And it's always important to remember, you cannot be more responsible over a person than they are responsible for themselves.
Over their own lives.
Yeah. You cannot be more responsible over a person than they are responsible for themselves. So let people take the lead towards making themselves better. And now, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in this call, it's time for your Q&As. So let's see what's going on in the chat box. I might have missed something, but Angela, is there a burning question that you've come across that we need to address? Kindly.
No, I think you answered the question that was there, but there was a comment that I thought was great.
Mm-hmm.
Go back. So Ruth says, this is very serious. Being the last born and the only child to get to the tertiary institution, I can relate to this. I'm still in school, but need to send money home as well as paying the rent of my mother, since I was brought up by a single mom. I can't save because something always comes up. When I save and I need to send that money to my mother, since my older siblings are not doing so well for themselves. So I think that is another subject that you can probably dive in briefly, being raised up by a single mom and being the only successful person in your family, and how you feel this bag of responsibility over your shoulders just because of that. But I see Liagoba Ivan has his hand up. So I'm gonna unmute you and you can ask your question, please.
Okay.
Ivan.
Ivan, please go on.
Oops, sorry. Sorry, Ivan.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very much grateful for this session. Actually, I've really enjoyed. I will not put on my video because in Uganda it's already dark. It's
That's
coming
okay.
to 8. Yeah. So the issue is we all come from families whereby we have either a lot of siblings or we have that one person that you have to look for after. And some of us were raised by almost the whole village. Even someone who gave you a jackfruit when you're going to school wants something, like when he sees you walking on the road and you are putting on a coat, he thinks you are very well off, yet you are also hustling in a university. And the little upkeep that we get, you have to send it back home. So I know we've created boundaries, we've generated some income projects for our families, but there is always that group, there is always that small group that is always on your back. Someone just gave you a lift to school and he says we are the one who educated that person, but now pretending to be not knowing us. Like, how can we go about with this minor group? Then another thing was sometimes you feel so guilty that you are not helping these people. Like for me, I come from one of the rural places in Uganda called Uyende. Now, this place, you find that almost all the village, whenever you look at almost all the village, people need hope and you feel like, oh God, what can I do for this one? So sometimes you move with, at times you go back to the village because there are no ATM machines, but your card has some money. You move with some batch of money and you say, this man is going to take me throughout the holiday. But when you reach at the village, you find that people are really suffering. Hunger is killing them. Maybe someone has put on, like, we may not talk about clothes, but there's some issue you really see that, yeah, at least I should not keep this 10,000 in my pocket. Oh, sorry about that. I should not keep this 10,000 in my pocket. Let me just give out this. So which advice could you give to us who come from the villages whereby we don't want to move with the money, but we are forced to move with the money. And when you move with the money, you are forced to give it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kindly, participants, please mute yourselves. So I will address the guilt bit, and then TK maybe can address the, this thing where Ivan is carrying around money and dishing out. He seems to not only jealous, but he's also a very empathetic person. So he's making it rain in his village. But yeah, we'll address that. I'll address the guilt part. The guilt part is very, very normal. As I said in the beginning of this webinar, that I was also part of that guilt. And if we're being honest, you cannot fully get rid of this guilt. And we have to accept. One thing about adulting is that you have to accept the truth that you cannot 100% get rid of this. So, but you need to get it to manageable levels, and a lot of times, a lot of this guilt, again, comes from growing up in poverty. And so, of course, you have to that's why we recommended talking to a professional, because most of these things that your professional, the therapist has to help you dig deep into you, particularly as Evan and everyone in this call. Where is your guilt emanating from? Let me give a practical example. I was sharing the other day with TK that one of the things that I used to do with my money is that when somebody called me in my family and they needed $300, I used to give this $300 to this person, and my expectation from this person was that they're going to give me 300 because I know they're not going to pay me back that money. And I know that if I needed the $300, they cannot give me such an amount of money. My expectation in my head was that they're going to give me that $300 back in love, you know, word of love. In like, let's say it's a brother and I've given him $300. I expected that from then on, he's going to call me a lot of times. Hey, small sister, how are you doing? Can we go for lunch? How are you safe? I expected that I expected $300 worth of love. But you see, a lot of people don't have the capacity to love you in that way. They don't have the capacity to return your expectations. And therefore, I was disappointed. And therefore, it led to a lot of guilt. And therefore, it made me feel, oh my God, I feel wasted. So guilt can be sorted by you, particularly seeking a professional who digs deeper into where is your guilt emanating from. So this is a very personal thing. And so maybe TK, you can handle the minor group who give you a lift when you're in class or in unit 1 and they expect that you need to give them money.
Yeah, so it's a very difficult one, I'll be very honest, because personally, I've also experienced it. Every single time I go back to the community that I grew up in, people have expectations. People expect that I'll give them money and so on and so forth. So for me, how I would advise, and this may not be the full solution, this is what I'm thinking at this point in time. The first thing is you need to understand your money personality. So every single person has a money personality, and you really need to have difficult conversations with yourself to say that, yes, I am aware of the situation in the community, but where do I stand? A money personality is every single person growing up around money. You were shaped about how your parents, your family used money, had an impact on who you are as a person and how you use money and make financial decisions, okay? So you need to understand, firstly, with the help of a financial coach and your therapist, what your money personality is. The second reality is growing up and adulting is you need to come to the fact that you cannot save every single person, and not every single person will like you. And you need to be comfortable with that. Not every single person will like you.
Yes.
And again, you where you are in your corner doing what you can, that's all you can do. Some other people, some members of the community also have the responsibility. So let's also move away from this thing that you have to save the entire community. It's not your responsibility. So for example, if you are great at, let's use the Wealth Tribe as a community, for example, through her creating personal finance content, through the videos that she puts out, through this platform and this conversation, she's already doing something to empower the community. So sometimes we tend to be very hard on ourselves, but do what you can with what you can. But again, do not do it to your own detriment, because if your cup is empty, if your bank account is empty, there is no way you can help other people when you yourself are suffering. So yes, the guilt will be there. Find ways to manage it. Yes, you see the poverty, acknowledge it, but put the oxygen mask on yourself first, because you cannot save somebody else when you yourself are bleeding or you are hungry. So that would be my stance. And it's not an easy decision to come to, but it's part of adulting.
Yeah, and that's why we're having this difficult conversation. And something else that just has come from mind from what you're saying. Two broke people cannot help each other. I repeat.
Thank you.
Two broke people cannot help each other. So by you going and trying to save everyone, what exactly are you doing? You are taking yourself back to the same situation they are in. So two broke people cannot help each other. And I really like that example TK gave about that. For example, I am creating personal finance content on my blog and my YouTube channel to help people. That is another thing that my therapist helped me come to know, in that my therapist told me, you have to sit down and define, how are you going to give back to society? Because if you don't define for yourself how you're going to give back to society, society will define it for you. And most of the time, society will define it for you in such a painful way that you're actually not going to make an impact. Society will define that if you have $10,000 in your pocket and you go to the village and see people who are suffering, give it out and such things. But if you have to be responsible for defining how are you going to create change in society and make peace with it. You're doing the best you can. And now due to the time factor, I don't know, Angela, if there's any other very hot question, because we need to conclude this conversation. I've seen people asking if this recording will be shared. I will upload it on my YouTube channel. TK will also upload it on their YouTube channel. You can always watch it later if you missed anything. Angela, is there a burning question?
No burning questions right now. I saw Brian raise up his hand. I don't know. We can take his question as the last question and briefly answer that. Brian, if you're able to unmute yourself, please do so before we end this.
Okay.
Somebody before he unmutes himself. Sorry.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Go. Okay.
I'm here. You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks so much. This has been an insightful session, and I'm really grateful for being here. Okay, for me, it's really a difficult conversation because you'd want to maybe try to uplift your family, I remember for me, I started supporting my family when I was in campus. I graduated in 2018. And through literally from first year to fourth year, I was hustling. And I had even to take 1 year break because I had to defer for 1 year, so that I support my family. So one thing that I did when I was graduating, I decided to maybe start my mother a business, a small business. But again, most of the times you'll realize that these people, they don't have the vision. Like as much as you're giving them the business, they don't have the vision. They don't see it. Again, also, I think another thing that we need to call our people into accountability. It doesn't matter whether someone is older than you, like even your mother, just tell your mother that, you see, Mama, I gave you this amount of money. What have you done with it? How is the business doing? Because I also realize that the fact that these people, even our parents, I really find it unfair. Personally, I've been through depression. I've been through struggles because you see people making blunders, the decisions they make in their lives. So again, you're like, I'm the child. I'm now the one to tell my mother, don't do this, don't make this decision, don't do. So it is so straining. So I think you've answered so many questions that I had, and I'm really glad that we can have this conversation moving forward, because some of us, we have that guilt. Like, it's not even just about black tax. I've also learned it's not even about even just where we come from, even our spouses. You can imagine, you can imagine you have maybe this boyfriend or this girlfriend who's like, they want money. When you don't give them the money, then they guilt trap you. You get it?
Financial abuse.
But that's financial abuse.
Yes. It's financial abuse. So again, I look at it from the point of we really need to have a conversation, because look at the rate of divorce. It's financial. Most people are divorcing because of financial.
50% of divorce.
Yes. So I think it is really a nice conversation. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm really looking forward that Agatha, let's have this conversation moving forward. Let's have another webinar. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh my God.
I love that. He mentioned two things that I think are very important. Holding each other accountable, because some people are comfortable with taking money from you and making you feel guilty about it. And when you do say, start this business, what did you do with this money? They will not account for it, okay? When you say, I've shared links to job interviews, I've reviewed your CV, did you apply for that job? Some people are happy being dependent, financial dependent, and here you are feeling guilty, beating yourself up when we are not having the difficult, honest conversations. So yes, thank you, Brian.
Oh yeah, his feedback is so heartwarming, and I am so happy that he shared. I'm so honored that he found it comfortable enough to say that at some point he was depressed, due to this situation, and it has happened to a lot of us. And I'm so proud that he's in a situation where he was like, I've got to hold you accountable. There's one thing I ask people. Imagine that your mother is 60. Right? Imagine, please mute yourself. Imagine that your mother is 60 and has retired, or any of your parents, or anyone who is depending on you. Imagine they're 60 and you're 30 and you're working. If this person is 60 and let's say the life expectancy in your country is 90, so that means that you're going to support this person for the next 30 years, right? So ask yourself, are you willing to support this person for 3 decades, for 30 years? most of us cannot afford to support people for 3 decades. And remember, you've still been supporting them for several years. Because we cannot afford to support people for 3 more decades, what do? Teach them financial literacy, teach them budgeting, hold them accountable. Like Brian said, empower them. You are not a savior. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, due to time, we will for sure keep having this conversation. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, subscribe to TK's YouTube channel. We usually, trust me, this is not a one-off thing. We have these kind of conversations on our YouTube channels and on our platform. So kindly do that. And now, unfortunately, we have to conclude. And I would like TK to invite TK to tell us what is your conclusion or what are your closing remarks?
Thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. So my closing remarks would be financial prosperity is for everyone. We all deserve financial prosperity. It is our responsibility, however, to change our bad money habits, have the difficult conversations, educate and empower each other so that we can achieve this financial prosperity. It's for everybody. We just need to change our bad habits and we need to keep on moving forward and making the changes that we need to do. So thank you. Thank you for today and thank you for the comments to everybody else. Thank you.
Okay, and my conclusion is that as individuals, we only have one obligation to society, to ensure that we and our children are not a burden to others. I repeat, as individuals, we only have one obligation to society, to ensure that we and our children are not a burden to others. So do it for you, do it for your kids, do it for your generation, third, fourth, fifth generation. And so with that, thank you, TK, so much for coming. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for honoring my invitation and sharing all this with the guest. Asante sana. Thank you, Angela, for making this happen. Before you leave, kindly, 1, join Baobab. Angela will share a link on how you can join Baobab. 2, follow TK on YouTube. Subscribe to TK's YouTube channel. 3, subscribe to my YouTube channel. We will keep having such bombshells. And I will invite you for the next conversation. Please come. So bye.
Most definitely.
Thank you for making this happen. Before you leave, join Baobab. Before you leave, join Baobab. Thank you for keeping us company. We appreciate you a lot. As the Wealth Tribe, thank you for making it happen. Thank you so much.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, somebody is saying, please share the slides. We will share them and plus the recording on YouTube. So if you want to have access to this, please check our YouTube channels. We will upload it in the coming week. Thank you, everyone. Bye. I appreciate you.
You and I, we're breaking back.